everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Irma, I'm a huge fan of everything writing, reading and book related, and today I wanted to talk to you about Elizabeth George. This is the first video in my series about Elizabeth George's Thomas Lynley series, and in this first video I want to talk to you about Elizabeth George, the author, the two main characters in this series, and at the end I want to give you some information about how I found out about this series. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and let's dive in. Elizabeth George is born in Warren, Ohio on the 26th day of February. She is 72 years old at this moment, and last month she celebrated her birthday. When she was very young, her family moved to the San Francisco Bay and she grew up there. She studied English and got her teacher's degree. After that, she also got a master's degree in psychology and counseling while she was teaching English. The first book she wrote was from the Thomas Lynley series, and she wrote this in 1985. So this series is pretty old at this point, but there's still new books coming out, so it's still relevant. So after she started writing, she still studied on, and she got a doctorate in human letter and a master's in fine arts. When she was writing for 10 years, I believe in 1997 or 1998, she started the Elizabeth George Foundation. This foundation gives grants to people who never have been published before and are writers of short stories or poets or all that good stuff. And I'm not sure how the program works exactly because I didn't read into it that much. But if you're interested in it, I will put you a link down below. It's in America, so go check it out. So, like I mentioned before, the first book she wrote in 1988, it is the first book of the Thomas Lynley series, and it's called A Great Deliverance. And she wrote this book in 1988, and in 1989 she got her first award for it. It was the Tony Award, I believe, for Best First Novel. So she's doing pretty well. And this is the first book that we are going to discuss because it's the first book in the series. And if you want to read along, you have a month before we discuss this in the next video. In the Thomas Lynley series, we follow Thomas Lynley and Barbara Havers. And Thomas Lynley and Barbara Havers are both working for Scotland Yard. Thomas Lynley is an inspector and Barbara Havers is an inspector sergeant. And they solve murders in England and in Scotland and everywhere in Great Britain. They're a very unlikely duo, and I will give you some information about who they are, and then you'll notice exactly what I mean. First we'll talk about Thomas Lynley. Thomas Lynley is the Earl of Ashington. He lives in a townhouse in Belgravia, but his family has a huge mansion, a villa in Cornwall, and that's the place for the Earls of Ashington, and it's called Howenstow. So that's his family home, his mom lives there, and in the series we'll visit it a few times. He is described as good looking, well mannered, and well, everything you think you have when you're talking about an earl and something with a title. Someone with a title, not something. So that's Thomas Lynley in a nutshell. Now let's talk about Barbara Havers. Barbara Havers is the complete opposite of Lynley. She comes from a working class family and she's described as not good looking and trying to look even worse. So that's a pretty harsh description, but hey, that's Barbara Havers. She is single, she lives with her parents, and she once had a younger brother, but he died when he was 10 years old. He was sick, he had leukemia, and Barbara blames her parents for something we're not going to say here. We can discuss this afterwards in the next book, because then it will be revealed why she's acting this way. But she's blaming her parents for something, and her parents are going crazy a bit. So her dad is living very unhealthy. He had to stop smoking because he has an oxygen tank, so he started using chewed tobacco. Her mom is afraid of going outside, and she has all kinds of stories in her head. I'm not sure if it's a form of dementia or another illness, but it's very interesting to read about her parents. And we'll get to know them in the series a bit, and we'll see how Barbara acts with them, reacts to them, and it's very fascinating to see this. When we meet Barbara Havers in the second chapter of the first book, you'll notice one thing right away. She has a very, very low self-esteem, and she's a very angry woman. She wanted to work at homicide, but because she couldn't work with other inspectors and she got in fights a lot with them, she was degraded and put back in uniform. And now she has her chance to become an inspector sergeant again, and she has to work with Lynley. She isn't happy about that. She really hates Lynley. From the way that he dresses and the way that he speaks and his title and his family home and the reason that he is called a ladies' man, everything that's said about Lynley, she hates it. So that's really funny to read, because right from the start you know this is going to be an adventure for the two of them. Doesn't matter who gets murdered. So in the series you'll notice that they're fighting a lot, especially in the first few books. You're like, okay, stop fighting. Why are you reacting this way? It's a bit frustrating, but the characters feel very real. They aren't like Mary Sue's and Gary Stu's, like, oh, we're all perfect and can be friends. They're really well-made characters. They really have character development and they have their flaws, and that's what I like about Barbara Havers, is that she can be this ugly-looking, weird woman and she's still lovable. She has a lot of things that pisses me off, but I still felt for her. She grew on me and she's amazing. And the same is with Thomas Lynley. You get this idea of being introduced to the perfect man, and that's something that I don't like in series, that the perfect man with everything working, not my type of book. So when I started I was like, nah, I don't like Thomas Lynley. And in the first book you already know that he isn't the amazing great man that he's portrayed to be, and that's amazing because everyone feels a way and you know that it isn't true, so that's also something that I really like. So the last part of this video, how did I find out about these books and when and why did I fall in love with them? A few years back I was with some friends and we're going to a book market kind of thing. It's a huge event that travels around the Netherlands and Belgium, and they have thousands and thousands of books to sell, and they're always in these huge halls, and it's very fun to go to. But we were there and I was looking at all the books because I was walking through every table full of books and I needed to go to the older section. And there I found Totdat de dood ons scheidt, which is the Dutch title of A Great Deliverance. And Totdat de dood ons scheidt means till death do us part, and I thought it was about marriage. So I picked up the book and I read it was about a girl who murdered her father. And I thought, that's interesting, because she says she did it and everyone else thinks she didn't do it, and Thomas Lynley and Barbara Havers need to find this out. I I thought, amazing, put it in my basket. So 25 meters ahead I found another book. And I picked it up. It was called Zand over Elena. And I believe the English title is For Elena's Sakes or For Sakes of Elena. I'm not sure. But the reason I picked this book up was because my sister had a friend at that time, or a bit before that, who was called Elena. And Elena isn't a usual known name in the Netherlands. There's only one person I know with that name. So I decided, hey, let's pick it up, read it. And it was about a deaf girl who was murdered and someone was going to investigate it. I thought, okay, I like murder mysteries, so I put this book in my basket and walked right on through. So when I got home, I put my books in my bookshelf. I didn't see that they were from the same author, and I normally put my books on color if they're not from a series. So behind me you see all series, but on the other side of this bookshelf I have all my books on color. And I put Elizabeth George's books at their colors, and I didn't see that there were two books from the same series. So Totdat de Dood ons scheidt, which you can see here, has a pink spine, so I put it with the reds and the pinks. And Zand over Elena has a purple spine, so I put this one at the purples. And I forgot about the books, to be honest. I had over 30 books, so I decided I would start with one and I'll see where I land. So I did this, and I read a few of those books that I bought, had some other books I wanted to read, bought some new books, and I didn't start reading them. At one point I decided to put my books on the name of the author instead of on color. So I started doing that. I was searching through all of my books and I didn't like it, to be honest. I love the way my bookshelf is looking. This side has series and on the other side I have my books in color coded, and I like it that way so much better, looks so much nicer. But when I was doing that I realized, hey, these are two books from the same series. And I can't remember if I bought the other two books somewhere between buying the first book and finding this out, or that I bought them afterwards. I can't remember that, but I put them together and I decided, well, maybe I should start reading them. So at some point I decided, well, let's start this first book. And it was boring. Okay, to be honest, I hated it. The first time I hated it because, well, the back said there was a murder on a father, and a girl who was 16 years old murdered her father. And I thought, this sounds pretty interesting. And then the book started very slow with a pastor or father figure from the church who was traveling to New Scotland Yard with a briefcase, and he was sneezing in some other woman's face, and he thought he was funny and had conversations in his head. And then we learned about how he was walking through the station and that there was someone who wanted to help him and that he didn't want to give his suitcase. Seriously, I was like, what is this? What bothered me most was that the series didn't start with Thomas Lynley and Barbara Havers, the main characters of the series, but with some father figure, pastor, I'm not sure how it's called in English, but he was traveling with the train, and there was almost a whole chapter, or maybe there was a chapter, just on his travel experience. And then we met two people in an office, and one of them had a title and one of them didn't, and they were talking, and they were brothers-in-law, and no, not brothers-in-law, they were married to sisters, that was it. And I was like, where is the murder? What happened? Didn't we learn in writing 101 that we needed to start with the murder, and you have to have a first sentence that says, come, read me, I'm an amazing book. And it was boring. So I read around 4 chapters and I met a lot of people I met Barbara Havers and Thomas Lynley, but I met Helen Clyde, I met Simon and Deborah St. James, I met Hillier, I met so many people that I'm not sure who was important in this story. So I put it down. I tried to read this book 2-3 times before I decided I need an audiobook to get through with this, because, well, it sounded interesting, but it started very boring. Maybe that's because I'm used to the normal nowadays writing style and not the writing style from 20 years ago. So I started with an audiobook and I read along with it, so when I got distracted I could still listen to it. And after a few chapters, when Barbara and Thomas are going to the place where this girl murdered her father, at that point the book got so interesting and it was so nice to read that I couldn't realize that it was the same book that I put down 3 times because I hated it. Elizabeth George is someone who writes in very much detail. So you need to like it or get to experience it and accept it before you can start liking it. It's not my cup of tea to begin with, but starting this series with an audiobook, liking it, well, now I'm not only used to it, but I love the way that she describes rooms and you feel like you're in this room, you can smell the fireplace, you can almost feel the oldness of the chair you're sitting in. She's doing an amazing job. But after I got used to it, I fell in love with it. It's just really great how she does it, because Elizabeth George describes every room and everything very detailed. From every living room Thomas Lynley and Barbara Havers get in, to the front yard of people and how they look and how they smell, and at some point you're really in this book. It's really an amazing thing to write this way. It's amazing to read what she's written, but I got used to it and now I fell in love with it. But if you're like, well, it's too detailed for me, I think you should give it a chance, because this is the great thing about the books from Elizabeth George. I read the first book because when I decided that I liked it and that the plot was very good, I stopped the audiobook, started reading it, and I read so much information, and when the murder was revealed and we knew who did it and why they did it, I was like, well, you didn't give me any hints, and how should I know who did it? Because you said that that guy had a motive to kill the victim, so I'm pretty sure he did it. Are you sure that you didn't miss your plot? And then you read the book for the second time and you notice that she gives you all the hints, but they're so well in plain sight that you're just reading and you think, okay. The other thing I like is that in this book you have Barbara Havers and Thomas Lynley, who are returning characters along with their friends and their bosses and their family. And the thing I like about this is that you read this book and you'll get information about their past, and you also get some hints about what is going to happen in the future. And that's something that I like, because it's hinted, but she can still change it and you can misunderstand what she has written. So that's pretty amazing. The characters, the plot, and especially the murders are very well written. You have the murder scene itself, and there are murders that you are living through the character who is murdered, and that's pretty cool. But you'll also get why the murderer chooses to murder the victim, and the confessions are so well written that they give you goosebumps all over. And well, the first book, I really was sick to my stomach while reading it, because it was so good, and you feel this so deep inside of you. Yeah, just read it. Just read it. I promise you, after chapter 4, it will be amazing, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So before we discuss this first book in next month's video, I want to know, have you read the series? Did you like it? Did you feel the same like I did about the information overload you got in the first chapters? Or didn't you read it and you'll have this on your to be read list? I'm really curious, so please let me know, comment down below. And I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye everybody.